Hi, it's me, Alex, the stay-at-home reader, and I'm here today to bring you a long overdue wrap-up of everything I have read. At this point, we're going to go ahead and do 2 months, February and March. So no, actually, we're just going to do February in this video because it got too long. So February only, I will be back with a March wrap-up. I know I wrapped up January, and in January I introduced my zines that I'm going to use as like a sort of fun kind of graphic journal of my reading. And so I find a picture that has somehow ties into the month. So this was a library poster from, oh, I don't even remember what year. So I found that for January, and then I have like a weekly planner I adapted into a reading log where I can kind of track day by day what my reading looks like over a week and wrap it up with a story graphic. A story graph is making wonderful graphics. I do not update my story graph daily to get like an accurate like page pages read per day kind of graph. And I'm not concerned with how many pages I'm reading in a day. I just want to make sure I do read in a day. And so that's why I came up with this idea of, so in January, I put the titles in a chart and then just checked off the days of the week that each thing was read. I just want to know that I am reading daily. So for February, I stuck with a zine, a bookish kind of graphic. So here we have, she looks like a librarian, but because it was February, I went with the Valentine theme. So it's a Valentine's Day card that I just popped as my cover. It doesn't say February on it, but I feel like it's obvious enough. And then I have a different format for tracking my daily reads. And then here are the dates, so you know that it did take place in February. So this month, what I have is a grid for the days of the week. And then, let's see if I can focus better. Maybe not. And then in each space, this combined Saturday and Sunday. So weekends, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Just put the covers. And then what I also did was kind of made this almost like a memory keeping kind of thing where I put in images of other things that were going on. So like on this day, I didn't read anything, but my mom was visiting and she gave me a manicure. So on this is where I got into collecting, these are scatterbugs. They're in the Pokemon Go app. And this is where I discovered that collection challenge was a thing and wanted to collect all the different region patterns of this Pokemon. So this is that week. And that's how I am using this to not only track my books, but on that day, my son had archery. So we have a little Valentine graphic with a bow and arrow. This is another Pokemon related thing. And this is Dory Phantasmagory, because this is the month that I reread that child's book series along with my niece, who I think in my last vlog, I had clips of her opening the books that I sent her. I've since then bought her every book in that series. And she has read them with my mom and absolutely love them. So whenever I have a phone call with my sister, I'm also catching up with my niece on Dory Phantasmagory. And then in March, I found this library journal cover. It says, in March, read the books you've always meant to read. And there's a lot of like classic authors on the books in the cover. And again, I did where I have each day and the book represented on the day that it was read. So each month so far has been a different format for the zine. I'm having fun with it. And then again in March, I used images to kind of also just have like a memory keeper, not scrapbook and not like more like a memory planner. Yeah, that's what they're called. So on this day I went book shopping, as you can tell from the stack of books and the money flying away. And on this day I had a stomach bug. So memories. Okay, so February. On the back I have my Storygraph wrap up with the ratings, the collage that Storygraph generates. In February, I read 2 more of the Sookie Stackhouse books. Let me see if I can find the title. Altogether Dead and From Dead to Worse. Oh, and I also read Dead and Gone. So somewhere around book 10, book 11, I've lost interest. I have not since February finished reading the Southern Vampire Mysteries. My January wrap up was all about how much fun I was having revisiting the series with my sister, and we've both stalled out at this point. We've both kind of gotten annoyed with Sookie. I know where this ends. And so now I think I'm at this point being a little more critical as I read. I feel like the author is now trying to force an ending. So Dead and Gone got 3 stars. I can't read the titles off of this. Altogether Dead got 3.25 stars, and From Dead to Worse got 3.5 stars. So my enjoyment level of the series has kind of like leveled out, and then my interest in continuing just took a nosedive. I read Invisible Man by Ralph Ellison, and this was a read-along hosted by Nicole, Noteworthy Fiction. This is an African-American classic of literature written during the Harlem Renaissance, and it follows an unnamed narrator as he is expelled from his college. It's an all-Black college, I believe, in the South. And he ends up traveling up to New York, lands in Harlem, gets involved with, he gets a job, he loses that job and gets injured and ends up in this hospital in this really intense scene. And then from there, he accidentally starts a riot, gets roped into this organization called the Brotherhood, rises in social status, and then learns truths about the goals of this brotherhood, and then ends up in a circular narration style, like back where the book has started, where he's told you he is hiding in the dark in a cave, about to come out of his hibernation. And so this whole circular story, every really intense situation that he is in, chapter to chapter, is an excellent kind of a ride through history in like allegory form of like the Black experience in America, from being exploited as slaves, and then getting freedoms, but being at the mercy of the white perception. It also has to do a lot with the idea of playing a game and getting ahead. And so there's different characters who impact him throughout the story that have kind of different ideas of what matters. Is it making it yourself and looking out for yourself and playing a role that keeps you safe? Or is it, on the other hand, making waves and fighting back, and in that way kind of bringing up people with you? So it was an excellent book for discussion. I gave it 4 stars. And I don't know why 4 stars. I feel like in the time since I've read it, it has had such an impact on me. In fact, I finished it shortly before Kendrick Lamar's Super Bowl halftime performance. And so as I'm watching that live, that performance blew my mind. And the whole time I'm watching it, I'm picking out images and language used that was just bringing to mind Invisible Man. And so the way it has sat with me and made me continue thinking about the themes and the messages, this is one that upon revisit, which I'm not ready for at the moment, but it is heavily annotated, and I feel like this will be a good one to revisit at some point in the future, and I could see that 4-star rating going up. After Invisible Man, I listened to Erasure by Percival Everett, and this is a story about a Black man who is an author but is not interested in writing African American literature. And because of that, bookstores have a hard time knowing where to put him. If he's a Black author, isn't he writing African American fiction or African American literature on African American themes and history? And he's like, no, I'm just writing books. And so he gets shelved wrong in bookstores, and his sales aren't where they should be. And so his identity is, or not wanting to fit into an identity prescribed by society, is affecting his success. He has some family issues where he ends up being the primary caregiver for his mother, and that requires money. And so to make money, he sells himself out, and he writes a book that was so offensive and so like stereotype sells it short. It's this Black story that is ghetto, and he creates a character for himself. He writes under a false name, and the book that he writes to prove a point is included within the novel, and I almost DNF'd it just because that book was so upsetting. But as soon as you get through that, you get the response from his editor or his agent, I forget what role this character plays, who's just like, we can't, this is awful, I can't pitch this. And he's like, do it. And immediately they get an offer, and the book starts getting awards. People want to make a movie out of it, and it just snowballs and proves his point. And so the messaging and theme of the book, I really loved. The execution of the book overall, Erasure, not the book within the book. I mean, the book within the book was awful. The book as a whole didn't quite work for me. But when I talk about it, the themes that Percival Everett writes, and I found the same thing to be the case when I read The Trees, also Buddy Read with Nicole, were like, I want to love it because I really appreciate what he's writing about, but the way he ends up writing it, something kind of misses. And so in the end, I gave Erasure 3.5 stars, but I am still very, very interested in watching the movie adaptation, American Fiction, again, because I like the idea of the story that's being told. He's got a very dark, satirical sense of humor that I really appreciate. And for whatever reason, I just don't end up loving his books, with the exception of James. Loved James. Um, and so I feel like he's an author that I am going to keep trying. Like, I want to find where, I mean, and maybe James is it. Maybe James is where like themes and writing style comes together to be my perfect book, and everything else is like kind of just missing. You know, it's not quite hitting there. But anyway, yeah. How to Sleep at Night by, oh, I can't see the author's name. Elizabeth something. Put it on the screen. This was a story which follows three main characters. Like, there's kind of three storylines, but they all tie together in different ways. But the main thread is following a man whose husband is running for Congress as a Republican, and the effects that campaign has on their relationship. Especially because this main, I forget their names already, I'm so sorry, but I did vlog reading this. So we have a couple in which one husband is super liberal and one, like I said, is running for Congress as a Republican. And so their political ideologies butt heads with, you know, their morals and their identity. And then the man who's running for Congress, his sister is a journalist, and she gets another kind of narrative within the book. And then the third narrative is a woman who is living in the district that the man running for Congress, it's his district, and she, shortly after college, had a relationship with his sister. So, like, it's kind of triangulates, where, like, each character kind of relates to the other one, but there's, like, separate threads of story that you're following, and they all kind of come around this idea of, like, politics and identity. It was an easy read. It was an entertaining read. And it just fit with the time, this idea of, like, where can you draw a line between we can disagree on politics and I could still be your friend, to say the least, and where do we say, no, your politics undermine my humanity, and I draw a line there. So those were all very interesting themes to interact with in reading, and I loved it, and I gave it a 5 stars. My book club read Lessons in Chemistry by Bonnie Garmis, maybe. Again, I'll have the cover with the author on it. This was 5 stars. This takes place in the 60s, I think. And it has to do with a woman in science and the treatment, or the regard for women in the workplace, especially in science, and the pushback she gets for living her life as an unmarried woman living with a man and then becoming a mother, being a scientist. Like, this is a very popular book, and I feel like I was one of the last people to read it. It was very popular within the last 2 years, I feel like, on BookTube and Instagram and Book Talk. I loved it. I gave it to my mother-in-law. We'll see what she thinks about it. Trigger warnings for sexual violence. And just sexism, misogyny. But it was an excellent story. And there's a dog character that I wasn't expecting. The dog has his own voice within the story. Like, the dog has a perspective. And I wasn't expecting that. And it was absolutely beautiful. And it made me cry. Yeah, reading this in February when I just lost my doggy girl on New Year's Eve. So that dog just, it got me. It got me. I love that book. So the day after book club, I get a message from one of the women who runs the book club, and she had a book recommendation for me. She's always recommending me thrillers, and that's not really what I want to read, but like in the past as a book club, we've done some, and when she reads a good one, she'll send me the recommendation. I'll often just go ahead and give it a listen because it's usually on Hoopla. And this was a really short one. This was like a 2-hour audiobook. It's called The Widow's Husband's Secret Lie, which is a ridiculous title, by Frida McFadden. And the whole book is a joke. Like I said, it's like really short novella thriller that is calling out the tropes of the genre, like in a very obvious way. And also pop culture. Like, one of the elements of the book and the abuse the character receives from her husband involves a very popular, I guess, meme. It was one of those like things that spread. It was the dress, right? The blue and black or white and gold dress. That becomes a major element of this ridiculous satire of a thriller. So I didn't even bother rating that. I also left off ratings for Dory Phantasmagory and Dory Dory Black Sheep, which are children's books that I am reading with my niece. It was a favorite of my younger son's when he was little, and it's just been really nice for me to like see her enjoy the series as much as he did, actually even more than he did. So I went ahead and reread it so that when I call my mom and my sister, my niece will pop on the phone and we'll also chat about the funny things that happened in Dory Phantasmagory. And then the last thing I read in February was Black Empire by George Schuyler. And this was a buddy read with Nicole. She has a way of kind of breaking down and analyzing books that is far superior than anything I could do. So I'm going to link her video in which she includes a review of Black Empire. It was not what I was expecting. It is a book of Afrofuturism, again written during the Harlem Renaissance, in which a man is kind of pulled into this movement called the Black International, which is a Black nationalist movement with the goal of overthrowing white supremacy and also punishing the perpetrators of colonization. And I think what we both felt was that the idea of punishing went too far. And the group we're following is actually the villains of the story. And so where we both, I think, were expecting this kind of like enlightened, like imagine if kind of story, it was actually, again, a satire, which didn't come off on the page well. It was after finishing and researching the author that I think we both developed a better appreciation for what George Schuyler was doing. Again, I will link Nicole's video for a better analysis and description of what was going on in this book. So I gave it a 3.25 star rating, which I'm comfortable with. There were things that were done really well, but ultimately the themes of the book were muddled, but I immediately ordered another book by George Schuyler and spent the whole day after finishing Black Empire, looking up literary journal articles on Schuyler and Black Empire and his political views and his use of satire. And yeah, so the other book I bought is called Black No More. And that book is about a medical procedure to reverse skin color. And I'm very interested. I think knowing more how he writes and the purpose and messaging behind his writing will help me enjoy that one better. So I haven't gotten to that one yet, but I'm very much looking forward to it. So that is my overdue February wrap up. And this is already very long, so I will be back with my March wrap up in another video.